I'll soon finish. I'll finish with this. I think it's time. The siyum is again, a siyum is exactly the concept of Oinik Shabbos. And I'll explain. It's brought down the name of the Arizal. The Satan has many names. And one of the names of the Satan, it's Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. That's one of his names. And it's brought down, this is Roshei Tevis. The abbreviation is the first letters of 4 words. Siyum Mesechet Ein Lasos. The Satan wants that one shouldn't make a siyum on a Masechta. What bothers the Satan specifically, that he specifically fights a siyum on a Masechta? Why is he specifically in contradiction to a siyum on a Masechta? David HaMelech says, Ribono Shel Olam lasoistres tzoincha chafatzti v'sei roscha v'soich meor. David HaMelech says, I want to do your ratzon. Not only do I want to do your will, I want that your Torah should be in my stomach. I don't understand. How's the Torah in one's stomach? The Torah is in one's brain, not in one's stomach. But when one makes a siyum, what is a siyum? And a siyum, we elevate the food, we transfer, we bring the Torah into the world of the physical. We bring the kedusha into the physical. The simcha of Torah. If a person is going to learn Torah, that's what Chazal, there's a special halor in Torah. Ein adam moimei Torah b'mokum sheli b'chafetz. The person has to learn Torah where his heart brings him. You can't learn anything with force. The mind only interests itself where it has pleasure. Simchas Torah, the simcha of Torah, the happiness of learning is conditional in learning. It's the pleasure in learning that motivates a person. If a person would not have a thought that doesn't give any pleasure, the mind can't entertain the thought. The attraction of the mind to think anything is the pleasure of the thought. So the pleasure of Torah is conditional. And so Chazal fixed us in the Birchas HaTorah, V'harev no Hashem Elokeinu is dibeis ras tebefinu. Make your Torah sweet in our mouths, because that's conditional in the mitzvah. It's not an extra madreg, it's conditional in the mitzvah. The Satan knows that if a person will have pleasure of Torah, who'll bring the Torah even to his stomach, and he can turn the Torah into the physical world, that's the end of his job. Because his job is to mafata the person to the pleasures of this world. But if the person can transform, to take the Yetzer Hara himself and bring it into the Torah, and use this Yetzer Hara for the Torah and say, no, I have physical pleasure, but I have the physical pleasure surrounding Torah, he's lost his job. So he fights this, specifically this thing. So my brach is to you from this siyum, when Shittaka go by to take pleasure and take koyach. And that's the same idea, by not to mention that anything that helps Torah gets the halach of Torah. That's why the women get the same schar as the men, because they help the Torah. This is a special chiddush in Torah. And the Torah expresses this in the pasuk. Smach zvulun b'tzeisecha v'yisocha b'alecha. The Torah doesn't say that Zvulun who helps Yisocha learn gets the reward. It says Zvulun gets the same happiness as Yisocha. The simchas at Torah. Smach zvulun b'tzeisecha. All those that help learn Torah, they have simchas at Torah. They have the same happiness at Torah. So I wish you all, Be'emet, you should finish, like we said in the Tefillah, finish Mazel Tov to those that finish the Masechta, and you finish other Masechtas, and this is the greatest weapon of Am Yisrael against all our enemies. Bizman Sha'akol Kol Yankiv, when we have the power, the voice of Torah and Tefillah, the Yadayim, the hands of Esav do not have power over us. Yitzhak Hashem.
London, your words?
His son just became a chassid.
My son just got not the first one.
Yeah, not the first one. I made a few since I was above the Rosh
Rav London will just say a few words as dessert, so to speak. We'll get our just desserts.
Wants to buy a seat in the shul. So the rabbi asked him, you want talking or non-talking? What do you mean? We have a talking you have a non-talking section. Which one do you want? He says, okay, I'll take the talking section. Okay, now you want real estate, politics, or sports? Long pause. Gabby looks at him, says, it's such a hard decision. He says, don't worry, we also have mixed seating. That is what Orthodox Jewry could look like if a person does not dedicate himself to Torah. So those who come to Samanafshi, they've learned the secret that one who does dedicate himself to Torah, he lives his whole life biblically. Whether it's in shul, whether it's in home, whether it's in all his relationships, he lives his life differently. Why is that? Because the Torah itself that he learns, the Torah affects his life. The mitzvah, the mitzvah, Hashem Elokecha, the Sifri says, how does one love Hashem? He says, learn his Torah. And if you learn his Torah, then you'll know Yishamar B'Hayoel, who created the world. You learn the Torah, then you'll see Hashem. And you'll see Hashem in every word of Torah. Because the Torah is the expression of Hashem, of Ratzon Hashem. So people who learn Torah, so they now know what the Ratzon Hashem is, so they live differently. It says, Hashem says, Hamor Shabbat Machzir L'Mutar, the more of the Torah. That's Rabbi Fairman said that's how we're going to start. That's tomorrow with Or. That's the Or of Torah. And I want to encourage everyone to take the learning very seriously and make it a part of their lives. And we'll all grow together. That's Hashem.
Go ahead. By the way, the more about Alexandria is a bit of a stereotype. Because they had a special deal where all the carpenters sat together and all the electricians sat together. They didn't have mixed seating. It doesn't say, it says they did it in order to give parnassa to everyone. So the question is, did they first just see the guy's face? And outside of shul we talked about, by the way, I heard you're a plumber, you need a job. It's a little bit ambiguous in the Gemara.
Good catch. On the other hand, they were all destroyed.
That's a good question. It doesn't say for that reason.
I have here, the whole last, on the right side is not Torah Sadah, but it's the words in Hebrew. And on the left side is in English with explanations. I just want to briefly say, first of all, thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the opportunity to learn here. It's something that's greatly affected, elevated my life. And for sending his Shliach Film to open this place. And I want to thank Rob London for the incredible learning, learning how to learn in depth, and so much as I'm able. So I'm very appreciative, and I thank you all for coming.
Shkoyach. Thank you again, everyone, for bringing whatever you did bring. There's a lot left over, so when you leave, please take for your wives, okay, and for anyone else who may enjoy it. Shots, Bezrat Hashem. Shkoyach. Mazel tov.
At the present, there's many subjects on my heart. I don't know, we have to make some kind of a synthesis between them because I cannot, I find myself, I cannot ignore the situation which we are in now. And we have to realize that the siyum is the only solution that we have to that situation. Let's put it like that. Perhaps symbolically, it says like this, Ma yasa odom v'yotzo meheble Mashiach. What should a person do to save himself at the time of the tzarot, the problems which will befall Am Yisrael before the coming of Mashiach? There's no question that what we are living is Chevli Mashiach. No question Chevli Mashiach is not a week before Mashiach comes. It could be as well a couple of 100 years. We're a long time in Chevli Mashiach. It doesn't mean that Mashiach is coming tomorrow. But we say, Umevi Goyel Livnei V'neihem, we say in the present form, we may be Goyel. All the uvdot, all the happenings and circumstances of Golis are a preparation from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't understand how to bring about the final redemption. So Chazal, what should a person do to save himself at the time of Chevli Mashiach? So it says three things. One of them, we say it in the Zmiris, one of them. Chevli Mashiach, me'eino yom haba yom Shabbos menucha. If you recognize the Zmiris, Chevli Mashiach yutzol levacha. Those that are ma'aneget Shabbos, maybe we can improve on that in both things. Shabbos is one of the schusim of Klal Yisrael, because Shabbos represents our uniqueness and how we are different than the Umot HaOlam. The whole concept of and the nations of the world, the whole concept of Shabbos. Why do we have a mitzvah, for example, of Oinik Shabbos? Because the difference between Am Yisrael and the rest of the nations, even when the rest of the nations relate to the Creator, they have it, they see it in a way that they separate themselves from this physical world. If they do come to some kind of recognition, the recognition is in the separation of themselves from the physical world, and to separate like a priest doesn't get married, whatever, to unite himself. Let's say there's something true in it, but to unite himself with the Creator. And we say, Klal Yisrael, that's what our Torah taught us, that since the whole world came from Hashem, it can't be that there's anything in this physical world which is in contradiction to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Shabbos, which is exactly this point. Shabbos is the ois, the sign that this whole world, on Shabbos when we rest, we say that this whole world doesn't have any independent existence, but it's the constant expression of the will of Hashem. And with that hashkafa, so anything physical as well is we can't put the division. It's only relative to us that there's the division between physical and spiritual. From the point of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, paradoxically, the physical world becomes the tool itself, me'ein olam haba, becomes the tool to bring to olam haba. And that's what the whole Torah mitzvahs is about. The whole Torah mitzvahs is to unite the physical with the spiritual, and when a person uses the physical according to the will of Hashem, that physical itself, of course it's dependent on his heart, how much his intention is to use it for the will of Hashem. That's the halacha. The halacha transforms the physical act to a heichel, to a temple for the Shekhinah to represent. According to the amount that we use this physical for the will of Hashem, so it becomes a heichel, it becomes a temple where is resting in that the power of the Shekhinah, and it becomes an arrow sending us to Olam Haba, to the world to come. And so we have to express this idea, Oinik Shabbos. Oinik Shabbos is what's in the middle of the week. If a person eats something, the eating, when it's not a mitzvah, can be paradoxically the opposite. It could be not good for the neshama. Suddenly on Shabbos, the eating itself becomes a tool to connect with one's neshama. Only with the hashkafa of Shabbos, because on Shabbos, when we rest on Shabbos, and we say witness, we testify in our resting, that this world is not an independent entity, but it's only, the whole world is only an expression of the will of the Creator. In that light of the hashkafa, of the testimony of Shabbos, the physical is not in contradiction to the spiritual, and that's why we have a mitzvah specifically to transform the physical to spiritual, and that's the mitzvah of Oinik Shabbos. But it's conditional, because the Karasa, the Navi says, the Karasa la Shabbos Oinik. Call the Shabbos a pleasure. How do you call the Shabbos a pleasure? Karasa la Shabbos Oinik. B'mokom Oinik shom tehei kriya, says Chazal. In the place of the Oinik, when you enjoy the Shabbos, call out to the Shabbos. That means like this. If you sit at the table, it's also so pleasure. You're doing it because of the mitzvah. There's madregas. But if you think on Shabbos, we can elevate our Shmira Shabbos, and we think to us, and we add to our sitting at the table on Shabbos HaKavana. Ribono shel olam. I don't want to now become physical. I know I have a goof, and my taiva, my pleasure might be ruling on me to bring me to just the physical act. But let me think now The Karos of Shabbos Einik. Why am I sitting at this table on Shabbos? I want to testify with this food that you are the creator and that every act in this world is an expression of your presence. This is the Mokim Einik Shomtei Kriya. If a person has this kavana, he elevates his Einik Shabbos too. One of the explanations, it says, Tshuva u'maisim toivim kisris b'fnei aparonius, it says in Chazal. Tshuva, to return to Hashem, and good acts are a mogen. They are like a shield against evil happenings to Am Yisrael. So the question is, the world asks, Tshuva, if you're talking about Tshuva, what else is there? After Tshuva, what is Masim Tovim? Masim Tovim is Tshuva, it's one and the same. What does it mean, Masim Tovim? So Rabbi Yitzchak Blaza, the student from Rabbi Sol Salantis, he says, Masim Tovim means the acts which are in essence good, which you do anyway, make them better, do them better. Tshuva is one thing, that there's Averis, but there's Maisim that you do anyway, even mitzvahs. The same mitzvahs that you do, you can elevate them and bring them to another level by adding an extra kavanah. So that's, Chazal teach us at this time, but the Einik Shabbos, elevate the Einik Shabbos. Einik Shabbos, Shabbos, elevate your Shabbos. Learn Hilchas Shabbos. Maybe there's things you do on Shabbos without even thinking, which are a violation of the Shabbos. If you don't, the Mishnah Brura, it brings from Rabbi Yonatan Eibschitz in his introduction. So if a person doesn't learn Hilchas Shabbos, the laws of Shabbos, it's almost impossible that within a Shabbos he shouldn't violate the Shabbos without knowledge. So learn Hilchas Shabbos, that's one thing. The second thing says Chazal, Yasek, which this is the connection with the Siyum, Yasek b'Teira. Teira is always the schus for Klal Yisrael. Yasek b'Teira. And the third thing that says Chazal, acts of kindness, Gemilas Chasodim. I would say, perhaps Hachnosas Orchim, invite somebody who's not as fortunate as you, maybe he doesn't have a family, he doesn't have the warmth of where to be. Invite people. One can't imagine what Chazal be a maflig. They write the greatness and the power of the mitzvah of Hachnosas Orchim. That's Gemilas Chesed. Let's turn around the table the other way. The Mokum, which this Rashi brings it in this week's parasha, Parshas Noach. The Mokim sheyesh Gezel va'arayis, in a place where there's Gezel, that was the sins of the Dora Mabel. Gezel and Arayis. The Arayis of today are the pictures which we're confronted all over. Anybody that has to come with internet, things are thrown at you, the preachers in the street. The Arayis has many Arayis doesn't only mean the actual Aveira. On Klal Yisrael, we are nidba on our eyes. Hashem expects us for Kedusha. He expects us to shelter ourselves from all levels and all branches of this chet. We are all confronted with many different levels of this chet. Anyway, it says like this, especially that all the technology and everything, that's why many people have come up with various programs that people should be aware they don't have to use internet and technology. Gezel va'arayis, wherever there's stealing and arayis, andur musya ba'al olam. I don't know how to translate the word into English. Maybe somebody will help me. Andalusia, but it means like we're experiencing. Andalusia means
Modern world.
what?
The modern world.
Well, Andalusia is more than the modern world. Andalusia is like total anarchy.
Havoc.
No, not habit.
Violence.
Havoc.
Havoc. Oh, havoc is the right word. Thank you. Havoc. I mean, total, like we're experiencing violence without any cheshboin. And the Lamusia mixing up comes to the world, Shahayreges Royim Toivim, that it kills good people and bad people equally. Tzadikim, Chasidim, Anshe Maisa, Rachmana litzlan. One doesn't know where the next bullet or the next knife is going to fall, Rachmana litzlan. That's havoc. And that's a result, says Chazal, that's Dora Mabul. That's a result from the Avelis of Gezel and Arayis. Gezel means dishonesty. Even dishonesty doesn't mean that you put your hand, you break into the other one's house. Any business deal which is not 100% is Gezel. And Arayis is Arayis. Like we said, there's different levels of Arayis. This brings these Chatoyim, not just bring Einshim to those that do it. These Chatoyim bring a Hester Ponim. Bring the hiding of the face of Hashem, that we see havoc, total havoc in the world. So let's analyze. What is the opposite? If we want to stop havoc, we want Zchuyot to prevent havoc. What is the opposite of Gezel and Arayis? What is the opposite? So let's analyze. Gezel means The gezel means that you take something which is not yours. At the end, it makes no difference what the system. It might be a very, very clever system, or a very clever using a very clever advertising agency. It doesn't make a difference at the end of the world. That means that somewhere that the packet of the other one became yours. That's gezel. Doesn't mean what system. You might have used a system that you confront the person. What do you mean? I sold a product and he bought it, and I represented this product and he bought it. So I didn't take anything from him. It's his choice. Misrepresentation, but it could be misrepresentation. There's many levels of gezel. The opposite of gezel. What's the opposite of gezel? If gezel is that his pocket became non-justifiably mine, the opposite is my pocket became his. That's chesed. Chesed is that I'm not medactic within. The opposite of gezel. Gezel is the epitome of the antithesis of chesed. And chesed is the antithesis, the opposite of gezel. So so for example, I invite people, take something out of my pocket to invite somebody to the house for meals and everything at Shabbos. It takes or not to be medactic with the other one, or to think how to help out another one. Chesed, if gezel brings havoc to the world, that means the acts of gemilas chasodim, they bring, or achnosus orchim, they bring seder, order to the world, they bring back the mishpat. Keneged, gezel, we need acts of chasodim. And the opposite, and what is arayis? Arayis is totally after, it's biologically from this point of the physical body of a person. The opposite, this is brought down from the Gra. The opposite of the Aveira of Arayis is the study of Torah. Because when a person studies Torah, it's totally an intellectual act. He's totally noita, he's meaning after his neshama. He studies Torah with his mayach, and there's the language neshama b'maychim. Like Arayis is a physical pleasure, Torah is also a pleasure. Torah is a ruchniistic pleasure. And that's the opposite. Ein hihuri, the language of the Rambam, ein hihuri aveira. You won't find hihuri aveira, ela belev hapomui min hachochma. Only in a heart that's empty from wisdom. Chochma is Torah. So if arayis, again the same thing, we have to do the opposite. We must do the opposite of what brings havoc to the world. If gezel arayis brings havoc to the world, so we have to be mischazik in chesed, the opposite of gezel, and asmoda, continuity and diligence in the study of Torah, because Torah is the opposite of arayis. In fact, Bichlal, we find shlichus dam and murder, maybe we have as well. It's interesting, I just want to go back. Al shloisha dvorim ha'olam oimed. On three things the world stands, right? We know the three pillars. The three pillars are Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. These that we have opposite of these three pillars, we have three avot aveira, three avot hatumah. That this tumah is such a tumah that a person, even though usually pikuach nefesh pushes away the whole Torah, because the value of life is more than the mitzvahs of the Torah, but there are three pillars of tumah that a person has to give his life for. What are the three pillars of tumah? Avodah Zorah, Gilu Yorayis, and Shvichas Damim. Says the Gra. The Gra says this. These things are the total opposite of these three pillars of the world. They're not just like they're 180 degrees the opposite. Avodah Zorah is the opposite of which pillar? You tell me. No. Avodah. Avodah Zorah is to serve Hashem, which our avodah today is tefillah. Tefillah, that we have to put an effort into tefillah. That's why these are the pillars of many houses. Again, havoc means that the world's pillars are not standing. The world isn't standing. When the world's falling apart, it means there's a pagam, there's a defect in the pillars. When the pillars of a building are being shook, the whole building shakes. And we see that our building is shaking, that means the pillars are shaking. The pillars are shaking, so we have to say, how do we shake the pillars? These three pillars, one pillar is avodah, tefillah. Tefillah is the opposite of avodah zorah. The opposite of Torah, with which chet, we just now said it, which chet is the opposite of Torah? Gilu Yarayis. And the opposite of chesed, The extreme of chesed, shvichas damim, is murder. And the same thing, if shvichas damim doesn't make a difference, let it be by the umas ha'olam. But if we see that the shlita, that the rulership of that one has lost the feeling for murder, wholesale murder, that means that it can't, everything turns around Am Yisrael. That means that must have put up a gam, a defect in the value of life. What is so we have to be mischazik here too, the opposite of shvichas damim. The pillar that's the opposite of shvichas damim is the midas hachesed, to be mischazik in chesed. So I go back again in two different ways of viewing what are the things that we specifically today have to strengthen ourselves in. We must strengthen ourselves in the opposite of Gesel Balarayis, that's Chesed and Torah. Or if you want to strengthen ourselves in the opposite of the three, the pillars of the world are being shook. So again, Torah, Avodah, the Gemilas Chasodim. Now, let's go now, since we are